But the times that we weren't unified, we were like so stuck in our decision making. And it seemed like when we got unified after that, miracles would happen every single time.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to an episode of Call Me CEO. If this is your first time here, I am Camille Walker, your host. And here we celebrate women, especially mothers that are building businesses and also raising families. How do they balance it? What is the passion that drove them to create this service or this product? And today we are extra lucky because we have three amazing ladies who are going to share with us how they built the Preparedness Project. And it's three co-founders, which is tripping me up a bit because it's exciting. There's a lot of beautiful faces to look at. We have Alicia Wood, Jessica Ashcroft, and Alexis Byers. And they started on a street together with an initiative to come together and help women's lives be easier with meal prep and also food storage. And how can we bring that all together? And listen, if you're anything like me, meal prep alone is a big deal. It feels like a big hurdle sometimes. And then thinking about meal prep and preparedness, that becomes a big mountain. And so I love that their approach is more about bite-sized ways that you can create sustainable food storage and meal prep that it does not create overwhelm. So ladies, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited to be here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so fun because as we got on the call today, I'm looking at all of you and I've been inspired by many of you, sometimes online and sometimes in person. And it's fun to get us all here on this online space. I feel like sometimes I see people online and I'm like, oh, it's my friend. And yet I haven't seen them for years. And you feel like you know what's going on with them, but they are not seeing you, or it's a weird world that we live in, but it's something where we've all been so blessed by it too, especially with your account. I feel like you guys have such an innate way of bringing community together and women especially. And I would love to hear more about how that came to be.
Yeah. So we love telling our story of just how we came together because it was so like serendipitous and led by God in many ways. So like you mentioned, we started on the same street in Salt Lake County, and it was probably around 2020. I was pregnant with my first son, and obviously the world was kind of shutting down. And like, I just remember this moment where I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have food to like feed my family. And like, I've been told and counseled to like do this forever. And like, it would probably be a good idea. And I think a lot of us had that like freak out moment, you know, when stores were kind of shutting down or like running out of supplies. Anyways, so it got me into this individual effort of like preparing, but I was buying tons and tons of things, didn't really know, kind of helter-skelter, spending way too much money, embarrassingly. But then I was asked to like present about all the things I was learning at an activity for a church. And Alexis and Jessica showed up. They were like two of the like very like had lots of questions. They were very interested. And we decided to start a little neighborhood group after we met because we're like, we need to like have continuity from this. Otherwise, like we're not going to keep going.
Reminders, right? I feel like at that time too, it felt like apocalyptic where we're like, if we don't get this thing that's left on the shelf, we are going to die. I was buying some things I had never even ever bought before, like powdered milk or some things still to this day that I have not consumed, but I'm like, oh, it'd be good on a shelf. And other things that I'm like, oh, that had no shelf life. One of my biggest jokes at that time was I was doing a grocery order. I'd never ordered Nutella before. And I thought, listen, if we are in a pandemic, everything's shut down, I'm going to get Nutella because that's like a splurge. I have never stopped ordering Nutella since that day. And what's even more funny is that at the time, grocery orders were kind of getting mixed up. So I ordered one, but I got 8 like huge Nutella servings, like big canisters of Nutella. And it became this big joke because I'm like, I've never had it before. Now I have 8. And I feel like that's kind of what we were going through. It was
it's like a great start to your food storage.
Yeah. Well, we don't have it anymore. That became a new habit. But it's funny because I feel like that was a time that we were all just like, what do I need? And what's my family really even going to eat? And yeah, so it was tricky.
Totally. Well, and we just feel like that, like the more women that we've talked to, that's kind of everyone's story. A lot of people really were in this like frantic, like almost manic state of like, what am I supposed to do? And like picking all the wrong things, spending way too much money. And like through that process, we all have made lots of mistakes, very big mistakes, like similar to you, like spending thousands of, well, probably worse than that, way worse. And then through that process, we started meeting together every couple of weeks to like learn different skills and just to do it together. And it was interesting how like there was this shift of like, initially there was some overwhelm with everyone, like, oh, she knows so much and I don't know anything, but after a minute, we realized like we could all calm down because we had each other and we were all good at different things. And that like started to like change all of our lives. The three of us, we really, stuff that was overwhelming. Like I was like, oh, well, Jessica is good at this, so I don't need to be great at this. And Alexis is good at this. And I think they felt similarly that we all kind of were making up the gaps that we thought we had to do all by ourselves,
Yeah, I remember when I first moved away and we hadn't like started this business yet, but we had kind of been talking about something like this. And I just remember telling Alicia on the phone, like, I can't move away from our neighborhood. We have this like amazing thing set up. And like when the apocalypse happens, like I want to be here.
Yeah.
Well, we just started to realize that everyone had different strengths. Like there was someone who knew how to do something. Other people had like a generator, or other people had, so it started out as like this emergency preparedness thing. But then over time we started to realize that people were so overwhelmed with emergency preparedness, they couldn't even start. And so we kind of backtracked and said, okay, where are people getting stuck that's getting them not even to start preparing unless it's frantic?
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that as a community, as a neighborhood, between the three of you, you're like, okay, let's figure this out together. And it was also through that process that you said, let's become partners in this business. How did that decision get made?
Well, so I'm a software engineer by trade. So what really kind of started it is I was like, guys, we need to somehow figure out how to scale this like in a bigger way, because like what we have is magic, like this little group, and we need to bring it to the world. And like the way that I know how to do something like that is through technology. Mm-hmm. So I was like, we need to build an app. Like that was just my answer. So I remember like talking to them, and bringing the Lord back into it. Like I had this impression, just like I was already really close to Alexis and Jessica. I knew just had a lot of skills and like was always someone that I wanted to be friends with and like connect deeper to. And so I just had this impression, like invite the two of them. And it didn't really make sense at the time, like how it was going to work or what it looked like. But we started meeting every few weeks in Jessica's basement and started talking about some of our ideas. And we're like, what could this even be?
That's amazing. Would you say, as far as creating a partnership, I have done that before. When I first started blogging, I had 7 women that I started my business with. But at the time, it was kind of like a hobby that we hoped could maybe turn into something. And through that process, we learned very quickly, well, I did, that there were 3 of those women that were like, this is like a job and I'm not getting paid. And the 4 of us were like, we're in for the long haul, and we were able to figure it out. But it happened pretty quickly. So the fact that you were able to identify that early on is amazing, because I feel like that can be tricky. How were you able to identify those strengths early on?
Like each of our individual strengths, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Just to build the business.
Go for it, Alexis.
Yeah, that's a good question, because at first I think it really was hard. We had a lot of that. Like I personally just always thought we would do like some kind of a blog and do a free service. I never expected money, but like Alicia has like been in the trade forever. And so like, and Jessica too. And so they're like, no, like we need to make money and stuff like that. So there was like a time, I think, where we were like stepping on our toes a lot, stepping on each other's toes, trying to figure it out. And then I think what really made the difference is when we lined up clear and decided, okay, like Alexis is going to be the chief people officer because I have really good people, customer service, like PR skills, things like that. Jessica is going to do the design, and she's actually designed a lot of the framework behind our challenges. And then Alicia is kind of like doing all the tech stuff. And then what's really beautiful about it all is we kind of share the load on social media. And so it's just like so hard to get overwhelmed with social media these days, because we've all set up like, these are our days that we do it. This is a day we do the reel. These are our days for stories. And I think like just having like that orderly fashion and like a house of order, right? Being organized has just made things so much easier. And, everybody seems pretty happy and sticking to their roles.
That's awesome. So for people who are listening to this for the first time and don't know what the Preparedness Project is, because we kind of talked about what it was, but tell our audience what that means, like what it is that you do and the services that you have so that they know kind of how it works. And maybe that developed over time, so you could tell, how that developed, but tell us what you do. Like, how does this help people specifically with food preparedness and their meal planning?
So our vision has shifted even over this last year since we first launched our app. So we kind of started out wanting to provide just anything emergency preparedness for people, just all the resources that we had gathered over the last few years preparing. We knew we wanted to give them an app. And so that's always been a part of our offer. And the app currently can track your food storage, your water, and your toiletries. And then we have lots of other content in there. But as we were getting feedback from people and just like listening to our audience, we noticed that they needed just like really focused guidance on the food storage and the meal planning aspect of it. And a lot of people don't even put those two together in the same sentence. Like meal planning is its own thing and food storage is another thing. And not a lot of people our age put them together because they think food storage is outdated. And so after learning that, we created a 14-day food storage challenge. And essentially, it just breaks down into very small, we call them baby steps. So over 14 days, you learn the same system that will give you success in meal planning and using your food storage on a daily and weekly basis. So we just hope to empower women to see that whole part of running a home and being a wife and mother can be way more simple than you think it is, than you think it can be. And it can actually help just have peace that you know that you're preparing and following the prophet, and also know that you're saving money and you're helping your home just run as smooth as it can.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that? I think someone was,
I was just going to add to that too. One other thing that like Jessica was mentioning, we started to really realize that like, it became an extra thing to do food storage, and who has time or energy to do an extra thing? But the more that we applied it in our lives, we start to realize like, oh man, like being prepared makes our lives run smoother so we can do more, like more of what we're meant to do, our purposes, be with our families, more present, those things. Whereas like so many of the other like information out there that we've seen about preparedness is fear-based, it's overwhelmed, like it's all that feeling, and especially with like 2020, like just even the perception shifted even more to these extremes. And we're trying to hit like in between and normalize it, make it not extreme, make it just like a normal thing for moms.
Yeah. I love that it's the approach of using products that you're already using to fill your food storage, because I'll admit, hand raised over here, when I was able to buy a product that was like freeze dried, really high quality food that had a shelf life, and I could check mark that box, I was like, yes. But it legit took us like, I don't know. I've been married. I just had my 19-year anniversary. So I'm like feeling really old. Thank you. It was on Monday or Tuesday. But to be able to afford that food storage took a hot minute. So I love that your approach isn't this like all or nothing. It's a step-by-step, like, let's work with what you have, budgeting it and using it. So it's not just like this dusty canister somewhere in the basement, which is nice, even if you have the freeze-dried stuff. But it's also nice to think, hey, we just ran out of ketchup. Go downstairs and grab some. Like that concept just feels so much more freeing to what food storage can be.
And I think too, it's like you can do a mix of both, right? Because for me, like I also have a lot of freeze-dried stuff because
Yeah.
I liked produce, you know,
Mhm.
and meat and stuff like that. But I think like a lot of people have that idea of that's what food storage is,
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. So let's talk about unity. I know that a big piece of your brand and what you're building as a business is unity with the Lord and also unity with each other. What are some ways that you've helped to implement that into your business and with each other?
So we have always, I think we've all always had a common goal that we wanted to serve God in our business and that we're not just doing this to make money. We're literally doing it to help prepare people for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Like that's just really where we're at. And I think for us, like we have had little stints where we weren't unified, like before we cleared up our roles. And like when we just recently hired a business coach and like hire, you know, whatever it may be. But the times that we weren't unified, we were like so stuck in our decision making. And it seemed like when we got unified after that, miracles would happen every single time. Like, I'm not even kidding. like
It's
we
insane.
would finally,
Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
yeah.
Like, for example, we just decided to hire a business coach and it took a long time for us all to get on the same page about it. Like one of us was like really dead set on doing it. And then the other two were just like, I don't know, like that's a lot of money, you know, we can't afford that yet. And then like one by one, we all just finally got on the same page. And then we were like, okay, we all want to hire this coach. How do we afford it? And I'm not kidding. The very next day, we had a proposal for a brand partnership come through for us. You know what I mean? And it's like, that didn't like cover the whole thing, right? Or anything, but that happened. And then we like figure out this creative way to make the business coach work financially for our business and all this just boom, 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 boom. 3 days later, we hired a business coach. You know what I mean? And so it was just like nuts, amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know that there are times when it can be a leap of faith hiring a business coach. I've hired business coach. I coach people with business growth, and it's getting an outside perspective, especially with different team members, can be so impactful because their outside perspective and objectiveness to what's happening on the inside is so valuable because they can see pieces you can't, or maybe look at strengths and place you or help you define it better in ways that maybe you didn't see yourselves. So I'm a big advocate of business coaching at any level of business that you're in, because you want to be where someone else is, and finding it's like taking a shortcut in a line. That's how I've always looked at it. It's like you can use your time and resources to get there, but it's a shortcut, you know, if you can use the money to help you jump the line. So that's awesome.
I love that. And I think too, I like how you said it's kind of a leap of faith, and it really was. And it was like, once we like really decided to put our faith in that thing, it was just miraculous the way that everything worked out.
Yes. Can I tell another story that like
yes, please do.
Just that deals with unity, and especially with the Lord and like seeing our value. So, I mean, I hear a lot of like businesswomen, especially like just at least in our circle, like talk about how like your business helps you change more than anything in your life. And like, I've started to see that so much. Anyway, so we were trying to figure out this like 14-day challenge that we have this offering. And like one piece that we were very not unified in was pricing. Like that was really, really hard for us for a bit. We were just all over the place. Like all of us kind of, I think I can speak. All of us just had like money mindset stuff that we're working through and trying to figure out. And like, especially because this is so driven by like our desire to serve people. Like, we're like, we can't even charge, we shouldn't charge anything, you know? And it was interesting because we had been like kind of shopping around for a business coach, and we had another call with one of them. And like, it was interesting because in that call, like, she lit something up inside of us that helped us see our worth in a deeper way, that like we were providing this thing that could actually help change people's lives. Like, and we kind of forgot how much it's changed ours. And like, we're continually using the process to improve our own lives, you know, and so that we can be less overwhelmed. But it was literally crazy. So like, I feel like these stories are insane because like literally you can't make this crap up, but like literally within days. So we've been so ununified. We were thinking about the pricing, and I'm trying to think of the order of this, but basically like the next day our following exploded, like literally the next day, like, and it just kept going and going and going. How much was it? Like 12,000 or something? Like, I don't know. It like overnight, just
we gained like 13,000 followers in a week.
Wow. And was that from a reel that went crazy, or what was it?
Two of them. And they were old reels. That was the thing. They were like older ones that suddenly just randomly blew up out of nowhere, you know?
Yeah. And so it was just weird because I don't believe in coincidences, but it's really interesting to see kind of the resistance and the opposition. Before that, we were all struggling to be on the same page. And even after that, as we've been kind of figuring out like pricing and things like that, as we've prayed, it's been miraculous to see how like we've been brought together, and just like the momentum, like it's, for some reason it's so clear to see when we're all together, when we can feel like something's off and then we shift it, and it's like a sale will come in like literally that minute, like no joke. We've had that happen multiple times. Like it's crazy to see. So it's just kind of fun.
That's way cool. I think that it's faith always precedes that miracle, right? It's like, unless you're putting yourself out there, you don't test it. It's like you're missing all the shots you never take. So I think that that's a huge testament to that, of, putting yourself out there and being willing to take that leap. So that's really cool. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how we plan our food storage, getting into the meat of people who are, thinking that this is something that they might want to implement, but feeling overwhelmed. It's their first time, or maybe they've tried it and had failed attempts. Like, what would be the best way for someone who's getting into this and wanting to start food prepping and having food storage in a way that's sustainable?
Okay, so the very first thing we recommend someone who's overwhelmed doing is just making a list of their favorite meals, simple meals that their family loves, that they know that they can make. And then with that, you want to put those into rotation and start getting enough of those ingredients that you don't always have to think about it every week, so that you can just, when you sit down to make your grocery list, you can plan out those meals and know that you already have some of those ingredients ready to go. And then once you get in that habit, you can start building bigger and bigger quantities of food, until eventually you have like 6 months or a year's worth of food for these meals that you know that you're going to make, that your family will like to eat, and that you can save money by making them because you already have the ingredients.
So would you say, for someone who's starting, let's say that I was starting this month, how many meals per week? Because we eat out a couple times a week, typically, for sure once. The kids get pizza on Friday when we go out for our date. But like, how much, if I'm starting to build up like a sustainable approach to this, how much extra am I buying per week, per month? Like, what's the cadence of that?
So, I mean, in our challenge, we recommend just starting small. Like, we're all about baby steps because it needs to be maintainable. Because like what you were saying is, so many of us, we're like having this big mindset shift away from like checking your food storage every year or every 6 months to like using it every single day or every single week when you're like pulling up stuff into your pantry. And so we don't necessarily recommend like a certain amount. Like in our challenge, we say, pick one meal, do that 7 times, pick another meal, do that 7 times. So you end up having 2 weeks, but it's just 2 meals repeated over and over again.
Meaning you prep for that one meal, but then you store the other 6 of that same meal?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So like if I was going to eat like pasta this week and I was doing the challenge at the same time, I would be buying all those ingredients, but then also, 6 times whatever the full recipe was. And then was that what you were asking? I'm trying to,
just those beginner steps. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what we usually recommend. And it kind of also depends on people's budget, but like based on our experience, like we've had, frantic runs to Costco where we stock up on tons of things. And that is not, It's also not great because then like you have a ton of food that's all expiring at the same time. But if you're constantly adding stuff, we call it a living food storage, where you're adding the new stuff to the back and to be used like last because it's the newest thing that you bought, and then taking the most recent thing and eating that and working with that.
So would you say that your goal when you're having someone start this 14-day challenge is your goal eventually to help them get to a year's worth of storage, or like what is the, I guess, benchmarks of like, oh, cool, you've made it to 3 months, 6 months. Is a year the ultimate, or like, what's the timeline?
So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, like a year, I think we think a year is a good amount to store. However, like in our app, it actually allows you to track how close you are to a specific month goal. So we're very much, we're very different to a lot of food storage things, but like we're very much use the meals that you eat, not what I eat. And then also set your goal that works for you to start. And that feels right. Because if you're trying to do a 6-month goal and that feels overwhelming, that is literally like anti our system. Like we are like, this needs to be led by peace and like by just little steps so that you can maintain it. Yeah. So we don't necessarily actually have like an actual month goal right now that we say. We just say like, if you want to start with 1 month, great. That's better than 0,
Yeah.
So
what would you say the biggest hangups are that people have when they're first starting, or some of the most commonly asked questions?
I think mindset with food storage is probably the hardest thing for people. Like you're getting, especially if you grew up in our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, food storage is huge, right? And everybody has their mom or grandma food storage horror stories. Okay? Like, seriously. My husband was very like averse to food storage when we started doing this. And now he's a little bit more on board. But yeah, I think mindset is huge. And I think also I'm thinking back to like before we kind of came up with this system, what I thought food storage was. And I kind of think it was like what Jessica was saying, where it feels like I need to plan my meals and I need to figure out food storage. And this is way too overwhelming. I can hardly plan my meals. You know what I mean? And so automatically, like, I think a lot of people, when they think about food storage, they think overwhelmed, they think scary world events. Like people don't even want to think about that. You know what I mean? And I think like for me, like I use my food storage all the time because I forget to go to the grocery store all the time. You know what I mean? Or like if I get sick and can't make it to the store, or I just don't feel like going or whatever, I just always miss the grocery store, I feel like, on a random week. But I use my food storage to make like meals that I love and that I know my family is going to eat. So it's not just like for, oh my gosh, the end of the world or another COVID, or, suddenly there's going to be some crazy apocalypse and you can't get food for a year. Like it's literally for an everyday like mom happening. You know what I mean? Like if you need a quick meal because you like have soccer practice and you have to pick up the kids from school, and then you have another kid that needs to be picked up from dance or whatever, you will have that, you know what I mean, in your pantry. And it's like, you don't have to think about it. So
I was going to say another mindset thing that we were just talking to a friend, and we were asking like, oh, what are some meals that you guys normally eat? And she's like, we eat frozen pizza a lot. And honestly, we were just talking about it. We're like, literally stack up your freezer with 10 frozen pizzas. Like that is our technique. It's like build up what you have. And she's like, I never had thought about that before. Because so many times we think, oh, it's rice and beans. Oh, it's wheat. Oh, it's this. But it's like we all like, that is what like Jessica, Alexis, and I eat so differently, all of us, and we cook differently. And so our food storage actually looks very different, all of ours. And I think sometimes people just come in wanting to say, tell me what to store, tell me this, and we want to help. And that's what we're trying to figure out. Like, how do we help you do what works for you instead of just like using these default food storage like it's really the mindset away from like the way it was done before to a new way that's easier.
Yeah. I mean, I think of when you imagine even 50 years ago, the way we prepped and ate food was so different than how we eat today. I think one of my first gifts that my in-laws gave us for Christmas was a hand wheat grinder.
I love that gift.
Thanks, Mom. Which was like nice, but I thought this is nice to like tuck away somewhere. Like if we were so desperate, we were like grinding our own wheat, which is great. But I think the reality of us using that is probably pretty slim. So I like that that's your approach, is like creating and sustaining food systems that work for you and your individual families. Do you ever do food tours or like food storage tours within each of your houses to show kind of like how they are different?
No.
Will you?
I'm like, great idea.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I just, I have ideas and too many. That's the problem. But I think that's really cool because I think that too often we think that our food storage or our solution to anything, I mean, this could go for so many things in our lives, that we have an idea of what it's, quote, supposed to look like, where, you know, as individuals and as families, we're different. And that's practically perfect in every way. You know, it's like, that's the way it's supposed to be. So I love that it's very individualized. And if I would love for you to share with our audience where they can find you and figure out ways to fix their own food service or food preparedness and food prep. Can you tell our audience where they can find you online?
Yep. You can find us on Instagram. The handle is the Preparedness Project. Should we give our website, Jessica?
And on Instagram, what can people expect to find there? What do you have going on that's like, I mean, obviously you have some viral videos. So what's some magic there that has done really well for you there and what we can see?
So we've got, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So we've got plenty of how-tos, inspiration on building food storage, like a lot of transformation videos and stuff like that. Yeah, just fun. In stories, we kind of just like show our lives a little bit and also try to add value and add more tips and stories as well. So definitely stories can be really great.
Great.
I was going to say another thing that we actually do on Instagram. Well, we have a lot of, and we haven't talked about a ton, but is so important is water storage. And we realized that is actually a secret. That is actually like the number one thing we think people should be doing, but no one even starts there if they don't have food. So that's why we kind of flipped our system, but we have tons of resources of how to store water, how to clean water barrels, how to rotate it. Cause that's also an overwhelming piece, but we haven't even gotten into that. Eventually we'll teach it more in like a program, I'm sure, but we're like, we got to help people with where they're at. But those that already have food storage, like we have other resources for water and other things down the road. Cause like it's a constant progress, right? Once you're at one point, then you move to the next and the next. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. So last parting bit of wisdom, I want to hear from each of you. What do you think has led to your success so early on? Because you're a relatively newer company. What is some advice that you would give to someone who's thinking about starting a business, and that can be or involving other people? Alicia, we'll start with you.
Who wants to start? Okay. Okay. How have we been successful? The Lord. I like truly, that's like what it comes down to. I mean, I'll be real. Like there's been so many times where each of us have been like, is this worth it? Like, should we keep doing this? And I think at different points, like each of us has reminded each other of like the higher goal, you know? And like, we are very intentional. Like we study business strategy, we study marketing, we study these different things, but we like really are like, does that feel right? Does that feel like what our step is? And so we try to like apply these principles in a spiritual way, because that's like our whole message is to like involve the Lord in taking baby steps. And so I would say that's truly one of the biggest things. And I guess second to that is like allowing like a business to refine you. I feel like the more that like I've just surrendered to like, I need to shift and I need to improve in this area. And Jessica and Alexis are teaching me these things that they're good at, or like that we're butting heads on or whatever. Like, it's like we see miracles after that when we allow, like, because we feel like this is our own preparation. At least personally, I feel like this is my own preparation in a spiritual way to like prepare to meet the Lord, you know, and that's like a cool thing that he's using. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I also was going to say Jesus. I feel like I walked into this with zero skills. You know, I just really did.
That is not true.
Not true.
Yeah,
that is not true.
Zero business skill. Let me say zero. I was speaking from a business perspective. I have lots of skills. Okay. But zero business skills. And I just feel like I personally, like, I liked how Alicia said, allowing the business to refine you, because I personally have grown exponentially in this last year. Like a big theme in it was like, give it to God and watch what he can do with you. You know what I mean? And that has been so powerful for me, just like overcoming certain like lifelong weaknesses, like that I've made big leaps on just this last year. So I think that's like so powerful, keeping the Lord in charge. The other one that I would say is unity. And I think that kind of goes alongside with, you know, staying with Jesus and like just being unified with one another and unified with God. I know we've talked about that, but that's truly been, I think, our secret sauce. I mean, I think anything that you want to do. I have learned that anybody can do business. I have been trying to get all of my mom friends around me to do business.
Yes.
Because I'm just like, yes, because the Lord will work with you and you will get to do really cool things, you know? So
that's cool. Yeah. Very powerful.
Yeah. For me, I had already been a business owner before we started this business together. And so, like they both said, like I've learned a lot about how to involve God in your business. Cause like before it was just me, like I was making the decisions, and to see how Alicia and Alexis both bring God into the equation every day, how they really trust in him and how they have faith and just like really make their decisions based on what they feel God is telling them to do has been like so amazing for me to see. And just like the way the success we've seen in this business has been so different than what I've seen before when I was just by myself. So yeah, like I know it's like the default answer, but yeah, really, really involving God in all that we've done this year has really given us a lot of success.
That's amazing. Well, this has been so helpful. I feel like anyone listening to this is thinking about food storage in a new way, which is the goal. And I'm really appreciative for that. What I've heard as a theme more and more is discovering your why, really tapping into your purpose and being unified in that. If you are interested in discovering your why and building a business, I do have a free 5-day discovering your why on my website that you can grab, as well as coming to the website and getting a Mom Balance playbook. It's a 56-page playbook where you can find the balance that's just right for you and your family, which also includes easy meal prep ideas and dinner ideas that are slam dunks in our home. So check that out at CamilleWalker.co. And thank you, ladies, so much for being on this episode. If you know of anyone who is looking for help in this, please send them this episode, as well as head over to an Instagram and follow them at the Preparedness Project. So thank you, ladies. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. This has been
Been a
great.
blast.
So fun.
Hey, CEOs, thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please let me know in a comment and a 5-star review. You could have the chance of being a featured review on an upcoming episode. Continue the conversation on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast. And remember, you are the boss.